Hey, this is a walkthrough of my Max for Live device Vertex, which is a sequenced synth, which is quite heavily inspired by the Moog DFAM or the Behringer Edge. But I think it also goes off into its own territory a bit. It's not just a straight clone of it. So I'm gonna just play a few examples and talk about the architecture of it and the features of it, and then hopefully you can have some fun with it. So it's a great synth for like atonal techno kind of bleeps like this. But you can do more than just that. So here there's like 4 instances of it doing different parts. So we've got the bleep thing, hi-hats, kind of tom sound, and some sub bass. It's also good for kind of weird modular Mike Parker kind of sounding techno noises. And here's just one more example of it doing 3 different parts of this. So we've got the bleep bass thing, this kind of atmospheric element, and these hi-hats. And there's a lot more you can do with it as well. You know, I tend to use it for techno sounding stuff, but I think you could take it into lots of different directions. So I'm going to start a new project and just talk through the structure of the device. So it's a pretty simple architecture, really. You've got 2 oscillators, filter, amplitude envelope, and some sequencers. But even though it's quite simple, I think it's capable of some pretty interesting sounds. So when we press play on a new instance, you're just hearing 16th notes of just this one oscillator because it's got its level at 1. Not the most interesting, but we can run through what the oscillator does. So change the frequency of the oscillator. Pretty high, down to pretty low. You can change the wave shape. Change the level. There's an envelope, a pitch envelope. And we can change the decay of that up here. So you can use that to make like kick drums and stuff. And so we'll come on to these controls in a minute, but with this one oscillator, we can make it a bit more interesting by putting a pitch sequence in. So this here is a pitch sequencer, and we can make it like a polyrhythm, 5 steps. So now we've got some melody there. The pitch sequencer offsets the frequency. So as I change the frequency, you'll hear that the pitch is relative to that. And you can actually change the range of that offset in this tweaks panel, the pitch range control. So yeah, I guess that's one oscillator. Let's bring in a second one. So you notice that oscillator is not playing the pitch sequence, and that's because of this int button here, which controls whether the oscillator tracks the internal pitch sequencer. So if I turn this on, then now it's tracking it. Offset it. And when I turn it off, it's not following the pitch sequencer. And this can be quite useful when you're doing FM. So this control here controls how much oscillator 2's frequency is modulated by oscillator 1, and as we bring it in, and that sounds quite different when it's tracking a pitch or not. You can also have it the other way around, so the FM source tracks a pitch. So you can get some pretty weird sounds like that. Also what you can do here is glide. So that's going to make it so that we sort of glide between the pitches. You get quite an interesting sound. We have hard sync, which is going to reset oscillator 2's waveform when oscillator 1 resets. which can get it sounds a bit like pulse width modulation sometimes, and it's just kind of fun to play around with. And then I guess one other thing which is kind of interesting here is we've got this Q button that controls whether the pitch is quantized to whatever scale you've got selected in Ableton. So right now it's unquantized. But if I press Q, you can hear now that's actually that's only playing notes from a C major scale. So while it's not like you can't accurately create melodies with this sequencer, that will let you keep it so that it is in key with your track if you want to do that. So that's the oscillators, and then next up I guess we've got the amp section here, so you can change the decay. There's noise you can bring in. We've got a sequencer here, velocity sequencer, which will control the volume, and so we could program in something there. We can also, these R buttons randomize whatever section the R button is on. So like this will randomize the velocity sequencer, this one will randomize all the sequencers, and there's one here which actually randomizes everything. So if we randomize the velocity, you can get different sort of accents going on, get something a bit more interesting. Then we've also got the filter. So this has got 3 modes: low pass, band pass, high pass. It's an envelope with its own decay. So this is obviously a really good way to kind of shape the sound, give it some more interest. One cool feature is the mod here. So this is modulating the filter frequency from one of these sources. So if we play that, so that can get some quite interesting, like rough sort of textures, which is cool. Then I guess the main other thing to point out is we've got these 2 other sequences here, mod 1 and mod 2, and what do they do? So by default they aren't actually doing anything, but you can route these to pretty much any parameter and have them control it. So let's just generate a sequence here. So now mod 1 has got a sequence. Let's make this kind of back how it was. So I can now, on any control, this little sort of dark square is going to bring up this pop-up list, and here you can choose a mod source. So you've got modulator 1, 2, velocity, pitch, or MIDI velocity as well. So if I choose 1, what's now going to happen is cutoff is going to be modulated by this sequencer. So let's just reduce it to a smaller number of steps. And the way it works is if the sequencer is at 0, the cutoff will be 0. If the sequencer is at 1, it will be whatever max value you've dialed in here, and then obviously in between that. So now we can, you can get kind of some modulation going on these other parameters, and it's quite cool because everything can be polyrhythmic. You can have each of these at a different speed, loop length. So you can start to get some kind of quite complicated evolving sequences, even though it was, quite simple, just 4 8-step sequences. And one other thing on the sequences here is you can change the rate of it. So by default, everything's on 16ths, but we can go into here and change the master clock. So this will make it 30-second notes. So this controls when the envelope triggers and when all the other sequences advance. But you can also make the different sequences run at their own speed relative to that if you want. It's not something I use all that often, to be honest, but you can probably get some quite interesting effects by doing that. What else? I think that's the bulk of the functionality. We've got this tweaks panel, which just has a few kind of miscellaneous controls, which weren't otherwise kind of, didn't really belong anywhere else. You can change the shape of the decay curves, change some parameters of the filter. You can also bring in an external signal if you want. So if if I just grab something, let's just grab, I don't know, grab a breakbeat or whatever. Warp, I don't know. So, okay, let's loop that. And then what we can do is send that signal to Vertex. Sorry, wrong way around. Send the signal to Vertex, input 1 and 2. So now you can bring in the external audio and it's going to run through the filter and everything. Again, don't use that super often, but you can get some quite fun effects with it. And you can also route in external audio as the FM source, that's on 5.6, and as the filter FM source. So yeah, just something fun to experiment with. And then the final bit really is randomness. I find that like randomizing stuff is a great way to get inspiration with a device like this. And so you've got this random button here, and that's going to randomize pretty much every parameter. There's a couple we don't do because we often result in silence. And you can, over here it says like you can hold shift so you don't change the mod sources, and alt or option if you don't want to change the noise level, because sometimes you might just not want to hear any noise. But this can just get you some quite interesting sounds. Sometimes you get nothing. But I generally find if you press random a few times, you can find something interesting and then kind of dial it in, you know, dial it back from being such a weird sound. And to be honest, that's how I use it a lot of the times, just smash random and see what happens. So yeah, I think that's it for the synth. Like I say, it's quite simple, but I've had a lot of fun with it. I find it quite inspiring, and hopefully you do too. Thanks.